So good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Wayberg, and I lead the marketing at Hexus Cyber Solutions. I'd like to formally welcome you to our 27-minute webinar on curing alert fatigue. We completely understand that your time is valuable, which is why we've created a webinar series that allows you to hear compelling cybersecurity information and still have enough time to get a cup of coffee before your next meeting. I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Chris Carlson, who is the Hexus Senior Director of Product Management for the HawkEye G product line. He has more than 20 years of security experience, with 15 of those years focused on product management at high-growth startups and publicly traded software companies. So with that, I'd like to turn this call over to you, Chris.
Great, thanks very much. So I'm going to take the next 23 minutes now to go through today's webinar. So it's really around alert fatigue and how alerts can hurt organizations in the ability to detect and verify and respond to cybersecurity threats. So we're taking an approach with the HawkEye G product on how to reduce false positives from network alerts and how to leverage our threat scoring model to identify and confirmed host infections of malware and external threat actor activity. So for today, a few slides on the modern problem around security defenses. The alert fatigue, too many alerts from too many systems generating a noise for analysts to go through, really drive the issue on what we call being blind to the breach. Even if your detection systems have caught some activity, it may be buried in other alerts that may not really give you a full picture. And what a lot of organized crime and external threat actors do is they purposely generate your alerts. They may do a denial of service attack against your web server. They may do some really low-end SQL injection to fill up your IDS logs and your firewall logs. While you chase that, they sneak around, exploit a user through a spearfish, and get in that way. So that's how we're using HawkEye G with the ability to do endpoint detection, network detection, threat analytics, and automated response to get through all the noise, confirm malware activity on the endpoint, and respond at machine speeds before there's a breach or a compromise. We'll also talk about our threat scoring model and how we are bringing in, with our new 3.0 release, Palo Alto and FireEye threat alerts directly into HawkEye G. So the main goal for us at Hexus and what our customers benefit from is fixing this visibility, verification, response problem. And there's many reasons why that is happening to organizations of all sizes. Lack of resources, maybe you have too many staff, not enough staff people working on too many projects. If you're governed by HIPAA, compliance, or PCI, you're probably spending a lot of time doing audit finding responses and not enough time doing security engineering and defensive. And that really lets the issue fester around alert overload, false positives, and then how do you really truly find that threat on your network, whether it's a organized crime, a truly persistent adversary, or those type of areas. So just as a summary, HawkEye G is an automated platform. We take automation and we apply it to detection, verification, and threat removal. So by using automation for detection, we can find activities of compromise, indicators of activity at the endpoint, at the network, use automation around threat analytics to surface the highest threat activity going on today, and then use automation to remove that threat before breach or compromise. So 2 attacker tactics. Number 1, they're banking on the fact, external threat actors are banking on the fact that prevention can never be 100% accurate. There's always a new 0-day. There's always maybe a new kernel exploit. And at the end of the day, if you're looking at exploit prevention, I can just send you an email with a non-exploit attachment. You know, just run this executable or download this new toolbar in your browser, and the user installs the malware without using exploits. So that's why prevention can never be 100% accurate, which can lead to that infiltration. And then there's the detection challenge. You know, how do you detect at the network and correlate it to the endpoint and endpoint activity? And usually that is where you take the most time and the most effort. And by spending days or weeks or months trying to find the activity, the external threat actor can get in, laterally move, find the high-value asset, and then exfiltrate or sabotage. Some things from the Verizon Data Breach Report. These are really startling numbers in terms of that 85% of compromises took days or less. In reality, days is in quotes. Verizon's Data Breach Report actually says it's not days, it's hours or less in terms of compromise. And then less than 20% of compromise were discovered in days. The average is 240 days to discover a compromise. And by then, it's way too late. So how do you speed that up? At Hexus, we say use automation to speed that up. So why are attacks working? So, we know nowadays antivirus is no longer the best tool to defend against stealthy attacks or maybe even commodity attacks. Here's one example here. This is a screenshot of the black hole exploit kit. You can buy this exploit kit online. It's about $50, maybe a Bitcoin or two, and this actually is a Russian version. From here, I can just click through and say, I want to target users of Chrome or Firefox or old versions of IE on certain platforms. Maybe I know there's a point-of-sale system on XP. Looking at targeted exploits, I want to use something to exploit against Java. I don't need to program. I can just click, 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 and then come in. The black hole exploit kit has a built-in integration with an antivirus scanning technology. So by having this automatically created exploit, it can test it against the AV vendors that platform integrates with. In this case here, you can see it's from 2011. The first code that I'm checking, 15 antivirus vendors would have caught it. So I can just change it, recompile, test again. And when I have 0% detection by the AV vendors, I can attack. So that antivirus evasion makes it very easy to get onto the endpoint. From a sandboxing point of view, to detonate malware in a sandbox and find what's happening, there's a lot of perception that the effectiveness of sandboxing is declining. And I think it's less about those technologies and it's more about where the innovation is. The innovation in organized crime, external threat actors is on evasion, how to evade perimeter devices, how to evade antivirus, and now how to evade sandboxing. So when sandboxing first came out in the mid-2000s and late 2000s, it was a very effective technology to find these type of malware threats in the network. But now the ability to evade sandboxing makes it very difficult for these to catch certain types, most types of attacks. And the main reason is that they're looking to see how the sandbox operates as a machine, knowing that the end user is on the endpoint. A sandbox may not process complex dialog boxes. So the malware will prompt the user to click on a dialog. The sandbox tries to speed up the clock. If the malware tries to sleep, well, now the malware can detect clock changes and not execute. Sandbox doesn't persist against reboots. Maybe the malware only starts on reboot. So this is an arms race in terms of innovation between the evasion techniques and the detection techniques at the network layer. What we've done at HawkEye G is we focused on the endpoint in addition to the network to catch these evasion techniques. So from a math point of view, right, targeted attacks plus antivirus evasion plus sandbox evasion, there's 100% compromise potential. So if you're faced with 100% compromise potential equation, then let's look to see how we can detect it and stop it before it causes a breach. So that's where Gartner is saying it's time to rebalance purchasing. That's code word for let's look at other technology in addition to prevention at the network. So that's what we're doing with HawkEye G because of the problems that I just went through and probably the problems that you're experiencing in your environment. AV's not working as well. Network perimeter is not blocking those threats. Too many events and false positives. If you have a sandbox detonate and finds malware and the sandbox is running Adobe Reader 8, but your endpoint is running Adobe Reader 10, the endpoint may not be infected. But the sandbox will say, alert, alert, alert. So while you chase down and take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, 2 days to chase down to see if the endpoint was actually infected, when in reality it wasn't, how many more alerts did you miss? And then if you're able to truly find something, how can you respond fast enough before the breach? So that's where we say customers are blind to the breach. We're addressing that with HawkEye G because we took a different approach. We took an integrated approach between a real-time endpoint, network detection, and a third-party ecosystem. That gives you visibility around those areas of what we call digital exhaust. Network indicators and activity, endpoint indicators and activity, and if you have third-party devices that are bringing threat alerts, we can bring that in and give you that visibility. Verification. At the end of the day, regardless of the evasion at the network and on the endpoint, the malware needs to execute on the endpoint. We see the file creates, we see the registry changes, we see the process execution, and that's we can confirm a host infection. And then we go beyond that by applying automation on the response side. So as much as you want to dial up automation and say, I'm only going to kill active malware that's communicating out, you can turn on that from an automation point of view. If you want to just keep the automation off and use the ability for an analyst to review, verify, confirm, and one-click kill, you can do that from our platform as well. So the components of HawkEye G from a platform point of view, there's the HawkEye G Manager. So that is a server appliance that has the threat analytics, the event data warehouse, the countermeasure manager, and those other command and control capabilities. The host sensor, lightweight agent that runs on the endpoint, very lightweight, less than 1% CPU, less than 25 mega RAM, less than 1K of network usage to get real-time event visibility into your network. And then a line of network sensors that go from 10 gigabit throughput bidirectional down to 40 megabit for remote offices and branch offices. And this gives you that network, endpoint, and analytics visibility. So I'm not going to go in too much detail on the slide, but you can't use one approach. You can't just use sandboxing. You can't just use something else. And what a lot of customers have to do today is assemble those niche security products and hook them together with some other integration points or syslog or something else. We give you the anomaly and behavior detection. We give you the signature detection. We give you the cloud verification service. We bring in Sandbox from Palo Alto and FireEye, and we bring this into our ThreatSync model to drive countermeasures and actions to stop the threat actor activity before the breach. The host sensor not only does malware detection, both signature and signature-free, using static and dynamic analysis on the endpoint itself, not in a virtualized environment on the endpoint, but we also do real-time eventing from the endpoint. So this gives you an up-to-date baseline of each endpoint, whether it's online or offline. You can support new use cases like ad hoc investigations. Where else is this file on my network? Where else has this process run on my endpoints? And then you can do some malware hunting as well. If you subscribe to a threat intel service, you get some early warning indicators. You can use our platform to do ad hoc malware hunting, see if it exists. I would actually say that HawkEye G would have caught it in the first place, but you can see if it exists. You can put in a local threat feed, and you can catch that before the files even drop into your environment. And we do that in this release with what we call ThreatSync. So ThreatSync is a combination of threat fusion. So we bring in threat alerts and we normalize those. I wouldn't call this a SIM or a real-time SIM. We're bringing alerts, threat alerts, and events into the HawkEye G real-time engine, doing fusion in order to bring around threat analytics that calculates the success of the threat actor. It's not about the severity of the malware. You know, I get it that the Zeus banking Trojan is really bad, but a lot of organized crime and external threat actors are using very lightweight exploits to get in, land, implant, take control, and then they remove all traces of their delivery vehicle. So it's not about the severity of the malware, it's about what the external threat actor is doing on your endpoint in your network. So we have built-in integration with Palo Alto and FireEye, so we can bring those alerts directly into HawkEye G through our ThreatSync model and do direct correlation and actions from there. But we also push our confirmed host infections via syslog into your SIM or Splunk, or if you use our HawkEye AP product. So if you have SourceFire or Cisco or Checkpoint or IDS logs, we can push HawkEye G host confirmed infections into that platform, and you can then correlate with your other network events, which you see there, and pivot back to HawkEye G to kill malware From a data flow, our network sensor or host sensor goes into our ThreatSync model. Policies drive automation or not, push out into your SIM, your Splunk, your real-time dashboard, and we integrate directly with Palo Alto and FireEye in the release 3 of HawkEye G. We bring in those indicators. We bring in the malware objects from the Wildfire Sandbox, from the FireEye Sandbox. Sandboxes, when they work great. We bring those in, we load it into local threat feed, and we catch those going forward. So there's a huge advantage in that area. Varied, easy-to-use, role-based web interface, an infographic-based view on what's happening in the network today, a drill-down view around incidents. We're using STIX terminology, so events to observables. Observables become indicators. For us, indicators of compromise or indicators of activity. And indicators are aggregated on a device basis. Malware activity happens on the endpoint. So we aggregate it into a device basis, and we give a ThreatSync score. And the score is based on threat actor objective on your endpoint. So that's very important because at the end of the day, when you need to prioritize your response, you need to respond to what's happening in your network. So if you have two endpoints and one has a piece of malware that's dormant, it's not executing, it's not persistent, it's not communicating outbound, we give that a score of 8. It's a confirmed infection with confirmed malware based on multiple indicators, but it's not executing. If another endpoint has a piece of malware that is persistent and it's a running process and it's communicating out to a command and control infrastructure, we give that a score of 10. They both could be bad for your environment, but from a response point of view, if you only had 5 minutes, if you had to throw a human body at it, let's start with the scores of 10 because there's an active connection to an external threat actor. With HawkEye G's automation, it may never get that far. You turn on automated policies, and the system will kill running processes, will quarantine files before they even execute, before the threat actor actually has done any activity on your endpoint. That's very important because as a closed-loop system, we're able to notify when the system remediates a threat. We quarantine a file, we kill a process, that indicator becomes remediated and a score of 1. The entire device is remediated. The device has a score of 1. We push that out via syslog into your reporting systems. So now you get a life cycle view of what is happening on the endpoint. If there's an endpoint that gets infected and then remediated by HawkEye G, then reinfected again, it could be a couple things. Maybe that user is engaging in bad internet hygiene. You know, maybe you need to make sure that the systems are patched and up to date, or there's some security awareness training. Or maybe that user is being targeted from an external campaign. But HawkEye G with automation around detection, verification, and removal will keep your systems clean before there's a breach. As we push that full cycle of malware activity into your reporting systems, I'm using a Hexis product called HawkEye AP here. As new events happen, registry value change, we increase the score to a 5. A file is created on the endpoint, we increase the score to an 8. A process is executing, we increase the score to a 10. So we do give you metadata around what the binary is. So you can do the research and verify what kind of executable this is. What is this a rat? Is this a Trojan? Is this a keylogger? Is this adware? But we increase the overall threat score of the device depending on how much the external threat actor has met their objectives on exploiting that endpoint and taking control of it. We also log the response as well. HawkEye G always does detection. We always do threat analytics. We always calculate a device score. We always offer up the next best automated counteraction. If you do not have a policy in place, we will tell you there's no policy. So at least you're informed from a detection and verification point of view that what's happening in your environment, and then you can respond from a manual point of view. In this example, I can click into HawkEye G from a manual point of view that we call machine guided. I can kill these processes and quarantine the file, and all the actions are logged. From an automation point of view, the system logs what it did. From a machine-guided point of view, it logs who did it, what was the requested action, what was performed, and the success, and then you can see that the overall device score goes down to 1. So the challenge around alerts, whether it's an IDS or maybe even an endpoint for detection only, and part of the alert fatigue is that they always generate new alerts, generate, and they never give you a view of what has now changed in your environment. So you're always doing more alerts. What we do in HawkEye G is we tell you when something has been remediated. So you can come in and you can say, all these alerts that I have in my SIM are no longer valid. I can clear those out because HawkEye G has remediated the endpoint. So part of alert fatigue is not only telling you what's happening, but removing those alerts that are no longer relevant in your environment because the endpoint has now been cleaned off. So we built HawkEye G to be complementary to network devices. You don't have to replace your firewall. You don't have to replace your Sandbox. We integrate it with it. We sit alongside of it in span mode or inline mode. The endpoint is very lightweight. It gets deployed for your hosts, and we confirm network device alerts with the HawkEye G endpoint host infection indicators. If you have Palo Alto and FireEye, let's talk because we can bring those threat alerts directly into HawkEye G. You get actionable verification if the host was infected or not. You get the ability to do countermeasures either from a machine-guided manual or automation to whack the malware, stop the threat activity before there's a breach or compromise, built-in integration from that. And that really is around that threat removal, right? It's one thing to remove the malware. It's another thing to remove the threat actor doing things on your endpoint and ultimately in your network. So we only have enough time. We made this 27 minutes so you can get some good information, see how this can work in your environment, get that cup of coffee, or if you're a tea drinker, we would love to give you a product demo. Part of our product demo, which is in a live environment, we'll give you a product tour walkthrough. We'll show you how we do incident and threat scoring. We'll give you one-click confirmation and verification of malware. Well, HawkEye G says it's bad. How can I check? One click, you can verify so you don't have to hunt around. We'll show you how machine-guided manual removal actions, one click, the threat is removed, the threat's gone, how you can manage policies for automation removal actions, and then show you how you can use our real-time eventing and our event data warehouse for malware hunting and ad hoc investigations. You know, once again, if you don't have remediation turned on from an automated point of view, this platform will give you enterprise-wide visibility. What is running on your endpoints today? What is running or has run on your endpoints even when those endpoints go offline? You can do historical query, historical search to see how widespread an infection was. So we give you those things in terms of a product demo. And if you're going to be at the RSA show next week in San Francisco, stop by our booth. It's right inside the entrance hall on the South Hall. We can give you a live demo there. Love to have you come by and stop. If you're not coming to the show and you're reviewing this in a replay on our website, you know, just click on the link to get some more information. We'd love to talk with you. So that's it for my 24 minutes, and I'll take any questions now in the remaining time we have.
Yes, Chris, thank you for the information. I do have a few questions already lined up. So in the 3 minutes that we have left, according to my timer, let's get started here. The first question from Sadie on the call is, if I don't have Palo Alto or FireEye, can I still use HawkEye G?
Yeah, so great question. The answer is yes. You know, we built HawkEye G to deploy easily and transparently in your network to give visibility from our network detection and our endpoint detection. We added Palo Alto and FireEye integration in Release 3.0 because customers asked for that. They're a primary mechanism in their environment. They spend a lot of money on those systems. They want to get a lot more value out. That's why we brought in those directly into HawkEye G. If you don't have those systems, we can still push confirmed host infection alerts into your SIM or your Splunk platforms, and then you can correlate that with your other network events to see if in reality you do need to take action.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Our next question is from Andrew. How much automation do people start off with?
Yeah, that's a great question because automation really comes down to the company's organizational requirements, right? There are companies that automate DevOps. They automate spinning up web servers on the Amazon cloud. or VMware. There's some companies who still deploy manually. So what we wanted to do as a platform is to let you automate as much and as broadly and as fast that you need to meet your security response requirements. But it's not a requirement to automate. So this allows you to easily start with machine-guided, kill the threat, kill the process. If you keep killing the same threat over and over again, then you can turn on an automated policy to do it from automation and then ease into it.
Okay, good. And our last question comes from Todd. I'm considering an investigation tool right now. Can I do that with HawkEye G? Yeah, so that's something that a lot of our customers actually have asked us for, and we built that out into this new release 3.0. Many times people want visibility more than anything else, or that's the first place to start. So you're looking at investigation tools. And a lot of those tools are, really powerful in terms of what they look at. But once you do the investigation, what's the next action? The next action is response. It's removal. It's get rid of the threat, return the system to a pristine state. And that's where those tools stop. They start and stop an investigation. We use all the events that we capture to drive detection, to drive verification, to drive response and removal. And you can use the same platform for investigations also. Okay, good. I literally just had the timer go off with the telling us that our 27 minutes is up, and that's perfect segue into our wrap-up, Chris. So I'd like to invite everyone on the call to visit our website at hexuscyber.com or follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @hexus_cyber. And as Chris mentioned, we'd love an opportunity to show you this technology firsthand through an on-site pilot. And after the webinar concludes, we'll be reaching out to set up your personalized meeting. So this concludes our webinar. Thanks again for your time today, and have a great day.